Nobody talks about the Wednesday, not the Monday. Everyone talks about Monday, the fresh start, the new beginning, the week stretching out in front of you full of potential and promise, and the specific kind of hope that only exists before the week has had a chance to disappoint you yet. Not the Friday either. Everyone celebrates Friday, the finish line of the week, the exhale, the reward. Friday has its own soundtrack, its own culture, its own universal language of relief. But Wednesday, the middle, the part where the motivation from Monday has worn off, and the relief of Friday feels too far away to be real yet, the part where the work is still hard, and the results are still invisible, and the gap between where you started and where you were trying to get keeps revealing itself to be wider than you initially calculated. The Wednesday of the diet, the Wednesday of the business, the Wednesday of the recovery, the Wednesday of the dream you were trying to make real. That part. Nobody posts about that part. Nobody makes a highlight reel of their Wednesday. And because nobody shows it, everyone who is living it thinks they are the only one. Everyone grinding through the middle of something hard thinks that the silence around them is evidence that other people do not struggle this way, that the difficulty they are experiencing is a sign that something is wrong with them specifically, that if they were truly meant for the thing they are chasing, it would not feel this relentlessly, exhaustingly, invisibly hard. So they stop, right in the middle, right on their Wednesday. And this speech is for every single person who is on their Wednesday right now and is this close to making the worst decision of their life. Do not stop. Not here. Not when you are already in the middle of it. Not when everything you have already invested, the time, the sacrifice, the courage it took to start, the resilience it took to keep going this far, is sitting right behind you, and everything you came for is sitting right in front of you, and the only thing standing between you and it is the decision to take one more step on the hardest day. Wednesday is not a sign to stop. Wednesday is proof that you started, and only the ones who started ever have to face it. I want to tell you something about the stories we consume. Because we live in the most documented era in human history, everything is captured, everything is shared, every win, every milestone, every breakthrough moment photographed and filtered and presented to the world with a caption that tells the story of the result, but not the process. Never the process. Not the 400 days before the launch that was an overnight success. Not the 67 rejection letters before the publishing deal that changed everything. Not the 3 years of building in total obscurity before the algorithm finally decided to pay attention. Not the moment at 11 at night in a small room with no guarantees and no audience and no evidence that any of this was going to work, when the person who eventually won almost became the person who wisely quit. We do not see that. We see the after. And so we have built a completely distorted picture of what the journey actually looks like. We think it is supposed to be exciting. We think it is supposed to feel meaningful in real time. We think there are supposed to be signs along the way that tell you you're on the right path. We think progress is supposed to be visible, and momentum is supposed to be felt, and the direction is supposed to be clear. And then we step into the actual journey, and it is none of those things. It is quiet. It is slow. It is full of days where nothing remarkable happens, and nothing confirms that the sacrifice is worth it, and nobody is watching, and the work feels like it is disappearing into a void that does not care. And we think something is wrong. Nothing is wrong. This is the process. This exact thing, the invisible, unvalidated, unremarkable daily grind that feels like it is going nowhere, this is what building something actually looks like from the inside. Every person who ever created anything meaningful lived inside this feeling for longer than they expected. Every single one. The difference between the ones who made it and the ones who did not is not talent or luck or timing. It is the ability to keep working inside the quiet, to keep showing up when the showing up itself is the only reward available. To trust, without evidence, without confirmation, without the applause that has not come yet, that the work is doing something even when you cannot see what.
Let me talk about what happens right before the breakthrough, because this is the part that breaks people. This is the cruelest design of the entire process, and if someone had warned me about it earlier, I believe it would have changed everything. Right before the breakthrough, it gets harder. Not easier, harder. Right before the thing you've been working toward finally arrives, there is almost always a period that feels like the opposite of arriving, a period that looks from the inside exactly like proof that it is never going to work. A period of maximum doubt, maximum pressure, maximum temptation to walk away. The darkest point of the night is just before the dawn. And I know that sounds like a poster on a waiting room wall, but I need you to understand it as a literal, operational truth about how transformation works. The seed underground does not know it is about to break through the surface. From its position in the dark, surrounded by soil, with no light and no confirmation, and no way to measure whether what it is doing is working, it just keeps growing. It keeps pushing. It keeps doing the specific thing it was designed to do, even without evidence that the effort is going anywhere. And then it breaks through. And from the outside, it looks sudden. It looks like an overnight success. It looks like one day there was nothing and then there was something. But from the inside, it was 400 days of pushing against dark soil with no confirmation that the surface existed. You are in the soil right now. Keep pushing, because the surface is real, and it's closer than the dark is making it feel. I want to have a different conversation about failure. Not the motivational version, not the failure is just feedback version that sounds clean and manageable and reasonable. Not the version that makes failure sound like a gentle teacher with a lesson plan and a kind face. The real version. The version where failure is devastating, where it is not just a setback, but the full collapse of something you built with real love and real sacrifice. Where it is not just a missed shot, but the destruction of something you were certain about, something you bet yourself on, something you prayed over and lost sleep over and rearranged your entire life to pursue. That kind of failure, the kind that does not feel like feedback, the kind that feels like a verdict. I want to talk to the person who has experienced that kind of failure, who is not in the early stages of building something full of hope and beginner's momentum, who has already been all in on something real and watched it come apart on contact with reality. That wait is different. I know it is different. And I'm not going to insult you by telling you it was all meant to be, or that something better is coming, or that the loss was secretly a gift. Maybe those things are true. Maybe they aren't. And the version of you carrying that weight right now is not in a place where those words can land anyway. What I will say is this. The fact that you tried something real enough to fail at spectacularly means something. Most people never try anything they could genuinely fail at. They stay in the shallow end. They take the safe path. They set the kind of goals that are small enough to be achievable without real risk, without real exposure, without the terrifying vulnerability of betting on themselves at a level that could actually hurt if it doesn't work. You went into the deep end. You bet on yourself at a level that required real courage, and it didn't work the way you needed it to. That is a hard thing. It's also, quietly, a rare and significant thing. You are not someone who played it safe. You were someone who went for it and got knocked down. And the person who gets knocked down in the deep end has learned something about swimming that the person who never left the shallow end will never know. Get up. Not because the next attempt is guaranteed to work. Get up because staying down is the only outcome that is truly permanent. Everything else is just information. Here's the thing about silence. In a world that rewards noise, that algorithmically amplifies the loudest voices, the biggest claims, the most dramatic transformations, silence has become deeply misunderstood. We have confused silence with absence. We have confused the person who is quietly building with the person who has given up. We have confused the person who stopped talking about their dream with the person who stopped chasing it. We have confused depth with stagnation, focus with failure, in the sacred privacy of real work with the suspicious quietness of someone who has nothing to show. But the most powerful things in the world grow in silence. Character grows in silence, in the private decisions nobody applauds, in the boundaries kept when breaking them would have been easier, in the integrity maintained when compromising it would have cost nothing visible. Skill grows in silence, in the 10,000 hours that happen in rooms nobody enters, in the repetitions that build capability so gradually that even the person doing them cannot feel the change until one day they try something they couldn't do before and realize quietly that they became someone different while they were not looking. Faith grows in silence, not the religious version necessarily, though that too, but the operational faith of someone who keeps moving towards a thing they cannot yet see, cannot yet touch, cannot yet prove is real. That faith, the one built not from certainty, but from the daily choice to act as if, that is the most powerful force in a human life, and it grows entirely in silence, in the absence of confirmation, in the